So with that, today on Thought Rock Live we have Phyllis Drucker, who's a business process consultant presenting cloud computing transform to services. She's president of Easy to Be Great Service Management and co-founder of So Do It Pro. Phyllis is an experienced and accomplished leader in the IT service management industry. Prior to her current career as a service management consultant and trainer, Phyllis was director of Consolidated Service for AutoNation Inc., where she built their technical support program and was the company's idle champion, owning many of the core processes in the PMO office. Phyllis left AutoNation to become the operations director at the ITSMF USA, where she was able to put her ITSM knowledge to use, building content and services available to the members. So with that, I'll introduce to you today Phyllis Drucker. Phyllis?
Well, I just want to welcome everybody. Thank you, Rick. Just want to welcome everybody. I know you're taking time away from what could be your lunch hour in many cases, so I do appreciate you tuning in to hear today's presentation. So what I'm going to be talking about today is something that is probably one of the most difficult areas for people to implement when they're implementing service management, which is getting to a service-based delivery option or defining services. But I'm going to be tackling it from a different place than we usually speak about it from. So what I'm going to be starting with is really describing what could be the Internet experience inside of your organizations. When you think about how people use computers today, it's changed drastically. 20 years ago, they were happy with, the computing environment that IT provided to them, and, people saw a little bit of improvement with productivity as a result of having machines available to do some of the work. That has changed completely now. Today, the Internet puts everything right at your fingertips. Anything you could possibly want, you do a search for it, you find it. In many cases, you can outfit yourself completely for free with Internet-based services. And I've got a couple of examples up there, but they're not the only ones. You can do email through Yahoo, through Gmail, through any number of companies. There are many companies aside from Skype that do video conference calling for free. Some of them offer it for free with more than one video session. You also have regular audio conference calling available for free through services that run over the Internet. You can have document sharing through a number of different services as well. And bottom line is, if you're just a casual user or a small business, you could run everything you need to do with all of these free Internet-based applications. So when you start thinking about people bringing that into their office, they're almost coming to work expecting that same level of service available. The other thing that we're starting to see more and more of these days are the smartphones and tablets. So people are starting to say, hey, why can't I work on that document on my tablet when I leave the office? Why can't I get to my computing resources through my smartphone and tablets? So they're starting to demand that IT start looking at some of the services they use at home and making them available during the workday. So this may be a little bit of what you're seeing. You're probably getting calls from people looking for this Internet-based experience. So we have a new challenge here in IT. We need to provide an Internet shopping experience to our customers. We need to make it easy for them to use their computing resources, whether they're in the office, whether they're on the road, on the go, and when they're home. And we need to provide them with the same types of collaboration tools that they can experience on the Internet. They have set a new expectation. The Internet shopping experience has essentially set a completely different experience or an expectation level for IT. Little bit of a challenge for us, isn't it? A little bit more about that. Today we have the ability to deliver that Internet shopping experience from our corporate environment. So imagine your corporate computing environment starts with one website. From that website, your customer could get any service that you offer, both requesting access to that service and then using that service. imagine they could do that from their PC in the office or from their desktop or laptop at home, that they can also access that portal from their smartphone or their tablet. This service, if you will, the single-stop shop for all of their IT services, would be available whenever they felt like working. 24/7 availability when people feel like working, when people have time to jump in and do a little extra work. This is the internet experience brought to the corporate environment, or the possibility of the internet shopping experience. So what do you suppose that would look like? So I've got a couple of examples.
And Phyllis, a quick question there. Question there. Do you have any? Is there any specific industry evidence that you have for the fact that it seems like you're saying that corporate computing is going in this direction? Is there any specific evidence that you can cite?
Well, I don't know that the Gartners and Forresters of the world have started to look at it. Although I did see one article on the fact that cloud computing is giving way to the tablet and PDA, and really projecting that people's needs are going to start changing in this direction. So I think right now we're looking at the infancy of this, and this is really looking at probably what does the picture look like 5 years from now? And I think it's starting to show up on the radar out there on the various analyst websites now. So we're probably 6 months before you'll start to see too much written about it. Anything else there, Rick? Okay, I'm going to, instead of analyst information, I'm going to give you a little bit of directional information and places you can see this in reality. So our colleges and universities have already started to adopt this kind of computing model. So this is the University of New Mexico's information technology website. It is available on the internet. If you search for service catalogs, it will actually show up in a search. And what you'll see is that while our corporations have not yet gotten there, and while the analyst groups have not yet gotten there, our colleges and universities have. So when I talk about something that's probably 5 years away as a new corporate standard, what I'm seeing is that's by that time these graduates that have grown up through college in this environment will be starting to hit the workforce and growing in their careers and looking for the kinds of experiences they've grown up with. So I'll give you a little bit of a tour of 2 college websites that I found. So the first is we have the ability to provide news and service descriptions, information about what we provide as an IT organization in this middle frame. We have MyUNM, the ability, if you click on that, you're actually taken to a login screen where you can log in and get access to your applications that are authorized. That's right up there, if you couldn't see it. And then down here, we effectively have a combination of service catalog and dashboard. So some of these, I clicked on a few of them on the live internet site. Some of these take you to other menus and more of a service catalog approach. But basically, this is a single portal that gives you access to anything. And I've actually accessed and navigated around this portal from my tablet to see that, yeah, this is an anywhere, any device type experience that we're giving our students here. Here's another one, Stanford University. Basically, another look, but the same sort of thing. We've got the user login to get to your desktop, so to speak. We've got your service catalog down at the bottom. So you see we have collaboration sites, communication, your standard calendar and email, as well as your applications and the ability to get to a full catalog. But at the same time, we've got the calendar over on the right, information about training, and basically a place that we could bring out any information that IT wants to get in front of the customer. But again, a single website, a single portal. And just to give you a little bit of background, 10 years ago when I was still at the dealership group that I worked for, we introduced a forerunner of this type of web portal that worked via a Citrix environment and was a single-stop shop for our dealership desktops. So this is not necessarily new, but the technology that powers these types of websites is now far more powerful than it was 10 years ago. So, when we look at this from a corporate environment, most large IT organizations have been challenged with getting to this type of experience. Desktop software and a very locked down corporate environment is still the norm. The big conversation you hear when you talk to people is, I'm worried about security if I make this stuff available. I'm worried about protecting corporate resources. There's a lot of concerns in IT. At the same time, when they start looking at how would I define a service catalog when I don't know what my services are. You know, they're still trying to define services in many IT organizations. So what I'm here to talk about at length today is really the fact that you need to think a little more like you're a service provider. If I was selling my services, what would I be selling to my customers? And at Linium, as we start looking at some of these things, what we see is that when we're talking to customers about cloud technologies and they're starting to jump into provisioning services via the cloud, that's when they start getting into a situation where they actually start defining the service catalog. So we're typically on the rest of the webinar going to walk you through some of the basic steps to actually transform to services in your environment. And Rick, I'll take a minute. Do you have any questions popped up? Just do a quick check-in before I go on.
No, I think we're okay. We're okay now.
Fantastic. And we'll get to the heart of it. So essentially, in today's world, for those of you that may not be that familiar yet with cloud, since it is still fairly new, cloud technologies are really changing the way Internet services are provided. We have two opportunities for infrastructure services. One is infrastructure or platform as a service, and the other one I'm going to talk about on the next slide will be software as a service. So starting with the infrastructure or platform as a service, this is an environment in which I, as an IT provider in a corporate environment or higher education, healthcare, I can actually go out and buy infrastructure services from a third-party provider. And that could be anything from going and buying room in a data center that is completely maintained for me, that I load up, or going to a company like Amazon, IBM, and others who have cloud environments, and they offer the ability to put stuff on, data and applications on their servers. So there's a couple listed on the bottom just saying, these are places that I can go. Just an example, what I'm talking about on the bottom of this slide is how this type of environment has changed the business world that we see. When I go out and I sign up with Dropbox and I put my files on their storage, it's actually not hosted by Dropbox, it's hosted by Amazon. So here's a situation where someone with a really good idea for a business can say, I don't need to go out and get storage space and infrastructure to be able to create my business idea. I could go procure those things from someone outside my company and get into business with a very low cost of ownership. Salesforce.com does a similar type of hosting where you may be using their CRM application or not, but if you wanted to start a new social media business, you could do it on their hosted platform. So these are two examples of companies that have leveraged outside platform as a service environments via the cloud. Since we as customers have no idea where the data center is, it doesn't matter whether you have your own infrastructure or whether you're creating your customer-facing business on somebody else's infrastructure. What does matter is that it does cut down the cost of starting a service significantly. The next one I wanted to talk about is software as a service, or and to distinguish a little bit about public and private cloud services. So software as a service is where you go and you're actually buying the software from a provider and they're hosting everything for you. Many IT organizations have become very familiar with this, as many of us are buying our service management applications through software as a service. As well, many of our advertising divisions are using products like Salesforce that is software as a service. So we've got that environment that we can put in our toolbox in IT. We've got the platform or infrastructure as a service, and we've got the availability of running services via the public cloud that I've been talking about, or building our own virtual environment and hosting private cloud services. So what you really want to think about as an IT provider is you've got your traditional data center and traditional applications and services available, but you also now have new tools that you can use to provide services to your customer. So what I'm going to talk about next is how do you make use of these tools? How do you move to the next stage of your organizational development as an IT service provider?
And Phyllis, just before you leave that slide, you speak of commodity services. Can you provide a few examples of what these are?
Absolutely. So when you think of commodity services, these are services that you can provide internally, but you can also get them provided for you externally. So let's look at the most common one, email. Running an email environment for your corporation takes a lot of resources. Aside from the storage space for hosting all of those email boxes, you have the need to be filtering for spam, blocking phishing attempts and spam activity, and managing service levels on this environment. That same environment can be purchased by any number of providers, and a lot of us use those providers for personal email accounts, but most of them also will run corporate accounts, and it will show up as if it's coming from your domain. So you get to use your same email domain name, but you get it hosted by an external provider. What we don't realize many times is that those services cost a lot less to purchase than they do to run, depending on the size and scale of your organization. I'm not going to say it's going to be cheaper for everybody, but there can be situations in which it's far less expensive to provide those services that way. Backup and recovery services is another commodity service you can purchase. In the old days, I call it the old days, you're talking maybe 10 years ago, and even now, when you run a business in an area that is prone to weather events, or you're very proactive in terms of business continuity, you look at hot sites as an opportunity for how you're going to bring your services back up in the event of a disaster or any kind of continuity event. Today you could purchase those same services from companies that do platform and infrastructure as a service at very inexpensive rates, because they really make their money on transactions. So when you're just storing software and holding it in readiness, it's very minimal cost. So these are the kinds of services I'm talking about as commodity services. Anything you could buy from a third-party provider that can be administered by that third-party provider, and you can do it less expensively elsewhere, is something that can be viewed as a commodity. Also includes, storage, data center storage. So using those commodity services that are available, along with idle processes and the best that cloud technology has to offer, can actually provide you with all the tools that you need in order to create that vision of the internet shopping experience for your corporate environment. So what I'm going to do now is walk through the various portions of the idle service life cycle and how you move through idle as a life cycle in moving to that vision, or how idle supports that vision. So, typically we start in the realm of service strategy. And it's in service strategy that we might make the decision to offer an internet-based shopping experience, to offer a corporate environment based on that shopping experience, and also to set architectural standards for the organization. Some organizations may make a strategic decision not to move to cloud for whatever reason, but in service strategy is where you have those conversations. Additionally, in service strategy is where you look at what you're providing to the business, to deliver on business outcomes, what services those outcomes need in order to be delivered. And when you look at the services that the business needs to achieve their business outcome is when you might say, looking at the requirements for this service, I think this is something we might want to host in the cloud. So here in service strategy, I'm actually starting to look at what do we provide today, how do we provision it today, is it internally sourced or externally sourced, and that's helping to develop my portfolio. So here in service strategy as well, we're looking at, for each service, what is the business case, what do we need to be successful in this service, and what are the financial aspects of this service. So let's look at that again from the service standpoint. When I'm speaking of a service, what I'm talking about is the combination of infrastructure and applications that we group together in order to deliver a business outcome. If you're going to hear about the IDLE refresh in a few weeks, and a lot more has been said in the new service strategy volumes about the fact that IT is providing a means for the business to achieve their outcome, that their various business processes are supported with IT services that we provide that actually fulfill on that outcome. So as we look at a new service needed by the business, we're going to look at the business case and the success criteria for that service, as well as the financial aspects of that service we're going to be providing. And the combination of the three is going to be used to evaluate our provisioning for that service. Are we going to do it internally? We're going to provide it from, through an outsourced provider, a third-party provider? Is it going to run in a virtual or cloud environment, or is it going to run on traditional infrastructure? That all happens in service strategy. Once we've made that decision, we're going to start moving into service design. So if we've made a determination that cloud services are going to help us get where we want to be, we're going to, again, base that on the business requirements, we're going to start really driving down into the specific business requirements, service level requirements that get our service level agreements structured, and we're going to be developing and finalizing those sourcing options. We're going to be working with standardized technical solutions at this level, and we're going to be creating the actual metrics program that we're going to use to demonstrate the success of achieving that business outcome. That, if you remember from your IDLE classes, all happens within service design. So what I'm highlighting here is that we're operating, on this bottom bar, we're operating in a certain set of technical standards to design these services. And these technical standards also need to be defined for, not only our regular infrastructure, our traditional legacy infrastructure that we've been running on for the last however many years, but also for our cloud environment. What are the approved standards for cloud? What we talk about here is getting a little bit more into things like security. Are there certain types of cloud services we can't use because they don't offer the security that we need? Are there others that do fit within our security requirements? So we're actually going to have a very set of rigorous requirements that we need to meet when we go to the cloud. And that's going to happen here in service design. Next, we have to start building it. So whatever we decide we're going to deploy, whatever service we're going to roll out to the business, via the cloud, needs to actually be planned for and built according to spec. So here in service transition, as we all know, we're doing the actual build, and we're starting to plan the transition to the production environment. Here is where we're going to actually start to deal with the organization change needed to drive the new technology. This is a huge step for many organizations. We need to be thinking about the technical people. Do we have the right skill sets? As we start moving towards cloud environments, do we need to send people out for training? Do we need to bring new technology into our own data center? Do we know what we need to do? to support that technology, making sure our people are ready, making sure we have a good structure for transitioning knowledge from the development teams to the day-to-day operational staff. The other thing is, I've got the note up there that managing cloud environments changes how people work out at the business level as well as IT. So, people may now need to cope with how does it work when I'm in an always-on situation. Just because I have a smartphone and a PDA, are people going to expect me to respond 24/7? So all of these issues need to be dealt with in a strong organizational change program. Additionally, the other areas we're going to be working with in our transition period is anything having to do with governance. Meeting whatever internal audit standards we need to meet is going to all happen within service transition. Once we get the new service out there, we're running into service operations. So now we need to actually deliver on the value of that new web portal, of that new cloud environment, of whatever we're rolling out in this internet shopping experience. So we're going to need very good incident and problem management. We also, if we're using public cloud services or infrastructure or platform as a service, going to need the ability for our operational teams to work directly with the suppliers. So during service transition, moving into operations, we want to make certain that we're introducing our day-to-day support teams to any providers that they're going to need to be working with. Here in service operations as well, we're going to be producing the reports that we're going to need in order to evaluate these new services. And it's very important that we know, again, from service design, what we're expecting these new environments to do for our organization, what those critical success factors are, and that we're managing our reporting program successfully so that we can see whether we're delivering on those business outcomes. So this is where financial management and CSI, continual service improvement, come into play. These reports here, we've got to look at what is the business getting as by way of a return from these services, and what is it costing us to operate these services. Additionally, if we've made the step to start procuring commodity services like email from a third-party provider, we want to come back and validate that we are truly seeing the savings we projected. So that's all going to start in service operations, and it's going to continue back through, into CSI. So this is our last phase here, right? So here we're going to be looking to make certain that we're constantly improving our catalog, we're constantly improving the products we support, the offerings that we have through that internet shopping experience, and we're constantly going to be looking to see whether our team's delivery of those services is where it needs to be. So we're looking at the whole picture here in CSI. And then I have a little bit extra here on the financial management aspect of this, because the financial management and CSI ride underneath the arrows above it. So what we're saying is when we actually start building our internet shopping experience and transforming to a service-oriented model of delivery, we're starting with the business case, the success criteria, the technical standards, and managing organization change to get there. But financial management and the continual service improvement and governance aspects of these activities are going to be the foundation on which all of those other areas lie. So without strong financial management and CSI practices, we can't support our service portfolio. So this is a real underpinning aspect of our delivery, of this entire picture. So just a little bit more about the tactical level. This is what I'm describing here is a very significant change to an organization. It's going to require very strong supplier management processes, because if you're using third-party providers to deliver some of your commodity services, and if you're blending a mix of your internally hosted applications and services with external services and mixing cloud technologies with traditional technologies, the ability to pull it all together and operate is a significant change from where you are today. People, when you embark on this journey, people will resist. They're going to be afraid. You know, are you going to need as many people to run our organization if we outsource some of this stuff to third-party cloud providers? Do I have the right skill set, or am I going to lose my job because I don't? All of these things need to be addressed before you really move into this transformational journey. Transforming your organization to one of being a service provider is a major change to the people in the organization and needs to be thought about that way. Otherwise, you run the risk of having resistance undermine the entire effort. So returning to ITIL, I'm going to use a little bit of our plan, do, check, act, Deming cycle that happens in continual service improvement and just give you an idea where some of these activities land. So, you know, in our planning area, we're going to be working on our strategic plan to become a service provider, to transform our operations from infrastructure and silo-based technologies to a service-based provision as a background. We need to gain our executive buy-in. We need to define the types of architectures, cloud included, that we're going to use to provide the services we provide, and we're going to actually create our service portfolio. Once that's accomplished, we're going to start the doing. We're going to be designing our services, figuring out how to source them, looking at determining what we're going to do in-house versus the suppliers we might need. So now we're going to need some strong supplier management. We're also going to need to make certain we've got good service level agreements in place, both with our customers and as a customer of those suppliers. And we're going to start building that transformational web portal that delivers the environment. And that could also be, it doesn't have to be a full-blown web portal. It could be some new services that you're providing within this new environment you're creating as well. And then finally, we've got to come back and check it. So before we go, you know, live, we've got our test and validation. We might want to do some pilot programs, review the results, and as we see some of those results, see if we need to adjust any of our plans and go into full deployment. So that's what this looks like from a plan, do, check, act. And I'll take a breath in case there's anything more.
Yeah, and Phyllis, there's a few questions here, and I know we're, just to do a quick time check, I've got 12:37, so maybe if we get, there's a few questions that I've got just kind of queued up here, so some of them may be related back to a few other slides. Would it be okay at this time to ask those questions? I know there's a couple more slides you have left in terms of achieving the vision.
Yeah.
So why don't we just go back to a couple of these comments and slides, or sorry, a couple of comments here, and we'll address them, but one of them is, first thing is, how do you gain executive backing for an initiative of this size?
Well, you know, the key here is that executive backing is going to come when you have an initiative that talks to your business outcomes. You know, 10, 11 years ago when we went to go recreate how an automotive dealership would look with an environment like this, we were actually able to show some significant bottom line savings to the executives. In this case, you start to get to the point where, you know, we were able to eliminate desktops because in many situations they had terminals for certain services and desktops for others, but also we were able to get from an environment where we were basically servicing everything from a corporate environment that had a lot of infrastructure and was considered overhead. We were able to get to a per user cost and demonstrate to the business how little it was going to cost per user to run out this new environment. So the way you gain executive backing is not by going in and saying, oh, we're doing this cloud implementation and we've implemented ITIL and we're going to take it through the life cycle of ITIL and give you a fantastic internet shopping experience. That's going to fall cold. What you need to be able to do is build the vision for what this creates by way of the business's ability to deliver their jobs, you know, to do their functions, their business outcomes day to day, and what savings or efficiencies or I don't want to say technologies, but what kind of service levels they're going to get as a result of this direction. So you want to show them in black and white. You know, the business has been asking for 24/7 capability to run these mission-critical services. This will get us there, and it will get us there at less cost than using traditional service design, you know, traditional infrastructure. So you need to be able to put the value as well as the return in black and white numbers to gain the executive buy-in. Okay, next question.
Yeah, no, a great point. And again, I think it's still lots of effort needs to sometimes be had there in terms of that language. The way you've just worded it is still, as many times as, you know, I hear it on these presentations in ThoughtRock, and I know internally, even with our own IT group sometimes, that language is still not used. It's more about we're doing this in the technical speak, and it's not, we're doing this because you say you've got this component as either tactic or strategy in the business, and you need this business outcome, so here's why this solution will help deliver on that.
Yeah,
so,
and I would
100%.
tell you, I would not even begin this journey if you don't have a sound business reason that ties to a business strategy for what the business is looking to achieve. If you don't need to go to cloud to deliver business services better than you provide them today, then don't go to the cloud. You know,
right.
Don't do cloud for cloud's sake, which is a lot of what I see out there on the internet today.
Sure. Yeah,
okay,
following the trends. I think a couple of great points here. Can you hear me now?
Yep, I can hear you.
Oh, great. Yeah, and a couple of folks did comment on that, Phyllis, in terms of saying, great point. If it makes sense to use the cloud, let's do it. If it doesn't make business, if there's no business case, then just don't do it. Cloud's not for every situation. So some good comments from folks that are commenting back on that point on the comments here, which is great. Another comment that Tony mentioned was earlier on is that poorly written contracts and SLAs can be at the root of bad issues with providing this kind of service.
Oh my God, yeah. I've done a couple of presentations with a partner at Fusion, you know, the Fusion event, and more recently in Spain, where we talk about that, because the reality is that if you don't have a good supplier management program in place today, your success in moving to the cloud is going to be questionable. You really need to have good relationships with the vendors. You really need to be in partnership. And the contracts are everything. I would not even think about making a move on signing a contract without getting legal to look at it and without getting the people who do service level management and day-to-day support. When I used to have the help desk and later the service desk reporting up to me, I used to look at every third-party contract, all of the service levels and the contract language, to see what it was going to take for me when there was a breakdown with that particular service. So getting, you know, a few of the operational teams to look at those contracts is key, as well as the legal team. Very good point.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I guess there was also a comment back when you were talking about commodity services, you know, in terms of another commodity services, the commercial data backup services for PCs.
Absolutely.
And I think the comment back was that, I haven't heard of this, but Carbonite is great for an individual?
Yeah, and I don't know what they provide by way of business, but you know, the other way you can look at this as a business is you could essentially go to infrastructure as a service or platform as a service and do your own company backups to another data center, you know, to servers at another data center. And that gives you some incredible business continuity, disaster recovery functionality, because you're backing it up to an off-site data center. And now you don't have to worry about moving tapes, and you don't have to worry about, you know, what happens if there's a major outage here. So, you know, there's all kinds of services you could use in that realm.
Fantastic. And then just one last comment. I think it's about further ThoughtRock episodes, but a comment comes from one of the individuals talking about this is a great point about executive buy-in, and it would be great to have a session just devoted to, you know, strategy tactics to get executive to buy it.
That's a great idea. So shall we move on and wrap up?
Let's wrap up. Yes, 12:44, so let's do a quick wrap up here, and I'll see if there's any other questions that pop up. But right now we've kind of cleared through them. Mainly, it seems like mainly comments, so if there's any other questions, please post them as soon as possible.
Great. So here's just a little bit more with how you act, you know, just to summarize how you get there. So you want to make sure that you're starting your strategy with the end result in mind. What is the business outcome you're trying to achieve in creating this strategy? and that remembering that part of service design includes the design not only for if you're doing an internet web portal that's going to give people access to everything they need, like I showed at the beginning of the presentation. If you're going in that direction, service design includes the design of that portal, but it also includes the design of your service catalog. So your service catalog actually is not only a piece of that portal, but it's your front end for your automated request fulfillment. A lot of times what people don't realize is they could kind of back into the service catalog from a combination of trying to automate request fulfillment and moving certain services to a cloud environment. When you combine the two, that's when you get that full one-stop shop. And then finally, when you start moving into the cloud environment, your catalog becomes more robust. And you see a couple of examples here. Like when I talk about developers can order a sandbox and have it automatically fulfilled. When you think about the internet experience, when you go up to a service like a Dropbox, you sign up for an account, you get space on a server. You get file storage space. So if I were in an organization and provided a service like that, I'm giving my users the ability to go say, I need a shared folder, here's who I want to invite to that folder, and have it be automatically provisioned. So cloud has many of these services built right into the technology. So it does bring some solutions to your tool set in trying to offer that immediate internet shopping experience that we have become, very familiar with in our personal lives. So, what can you take away from this presentation today? First is just vision. I'm not saying this is the way you have to go. I'm opening up a possibility of things that you could look at for where would we go with some of these tools, and then leave it to you and your knowledge of your business what that needs to look like. And I also want to leave you with an open mind to the new technologies, that they're not technologies to be feared because they have security issues or they let people put data outside the organization, but that you look at the new technologies and say, what could they provide to our organization if we implemented them appropriately? And then, kind of like the excitement that we're all going to face in a few more weeks. How many shopping days till Christmas, right? When you think about what we get excited about in the technology world, you can provide that level of excitement to your business if you get truly innovative. And that's all I've got. So Rick, if there's any more questions, I don't know what we have time for, but I'll throw it back to you.
Fantastic. Fantastic. We don't have anything posted right now, but again, if anybody has any other specific questions or would like to engage Phyllis, you can always engage her directly. I think, Phyllis, your contact information, you'll probably find you on LinkedIn and all over the place, but you can always reach out to Phyllis directly. And as well, if you do funnel anything through ThoughtRock, through any of these nodes here that we've got up on the screen, so the phone number, the email address, the Twitter account, we'll leave that up at the end for a minute, but we'll always make sure that we get any further questions or any other contact reach outs that you want for Phyllis. We'll make sure that we facilitate that, so please do that. In addition, again, I will encourage, I know a few people have asked in the comments here about the presentation being available, and absolutely within 24 hours these slides are available for the attendees. There's a PDF of the slides that's available with inside ThoughtRock, an actual link to the presentation. I should clarify, the link to the presentation will be available to everybody. For ThoughtRock members, these slides will be available with inside ThoughtRock. So I hope that clarifies. And as well, Phyllis, I don't know if it's you or somebody else, but it sounds like we need another session on specifically on strategies and tactics for executive buy-in. So we'll chat about that. And again, I want to thank you very much. I mean, great. We got a lot of great comments here. I'll make sure you see them. It's thank you very much. Well done, Phyllis. A lot of people asking for the links to follow up later. So I think a lot of interest in the topic. So very well done. So thank you very much for joining us again today.
Well, thank you. It was my pleasure, as always.